What is up, guys? Coop here, and today we're going to be talking about World of Warcraft, and I'm going to talk to you guys more about a serious issue. This is going to be more of a podcast thing, so I'm not going to really show so much on the screen, but I'm going to be talking today about the state of World of Warcraft and why I actually have given up my sub, and why I think a lot of people in BFA are giving up their subs. While BFA really started off as a really good expansion, it definitely had a lot of different flaws and things that were kind of giving it a lot of issues. And I think it's important that we kind of talk about some of the issues that are at hand. I actually have a lot of different notes and different things that I think are pretty good to talk about, because I think that if they understand some of the issues, I think that we can kind of figure out how to fix the game into a way where everybody actually has fun. I see a lot of people complaining about the game but not really showing ways to fix it. And that's what this video is intended to show, where the issues are and some different ways of solving all these different issues, because I think that it's better not to just yell and kind of scream at these developers telling them to fix the game, and rather show them different ways and alternatives of how they can fix the game. So without further ado, let's dive into some of the issues. Next thing we're going to talk about is progression path. I made kind of a nice little chart up there for you guys to look. So basically this is what the old path is, and this is what the new path is. The new path is, obviously you do dungeons and questing, heroics, then you do warfronts and LFR, and then you do raids, without emissaries and Mythic Plus in the mix. So that's sort of the system that they're going for right now. I kind of made it to where it's reflected of how powerful the rewards are based off of where they are in the thing. Now this is the old path. The old path was a little bit longer of a path, I would say, but it had sort of a progression system to it. And we're going to talk about why the old philosophy and the new philosophy are kind of very different. They have their own pros and cons. And I wanted to make a list, but it's better just to fully discuss it. So the old path was you quested, then you did the dungeons, then you did the heroics, then you did the LFR, then you did the raid. So there's a lot of discussion in this. For one, the progression path of questing and dungeons. Nowadays, you can just spam dungeons as soon as you get to that level. And while I think that was really a good system because it allows you to grind up faster to get to the point of having the fun rewards and leveling, I think that one of the things is this is a huge miss. This part right here gets rid of a whole entire step here. I remember back in the day when you couldn't unlock a dungeon until you leveled up all the way, and I think that Legion really did that right. I think that having it to where you have to go complete an entire zone and then you get to do the dungeon was way better, because what it did is it allowed it to make it to where dungeons were a little bit more incentivized and a little bit stronger. What you could do is you could increase the difficulty of a dungeon just slightly a little bit to prepare people for raids and heroics, while making it to where questing was a little bit longer. It made the journey a little bit cooler. You didn't jump in and find out what the story spoilers is. If you did Waycrest Manor right at the beginning of Dressfar, it really kind of sucks because you already know what's going on now in the story. Obviously you can look at the dungeon journal, but I think that it really gets rid of a lot of the journey of World of Warcraft, and I think that's something that the World of Warcraft has been really getting rid of. So the questing to dungeon part alone makes it to where it makes the game a little bit more less than desirable. Now, heroics have always been kind of a good thing. I think that the heroics are really good in the state that they are. I think that they do their purpose, but however, now with all the extra incentives and things out there, heroics really don't have a purpose. I think that they're just kind of an extra difficulty level that really gets rid of what is the point of it. You can do Mythic Plus and already get more incentives out there, and you can do Warfronts and all these other things, to where heroics are just a baby step that doesn't even need to be there. I did heroics for 1 week, and I was already done with them. And I don't understand how there's even queues for heroics at the moment, because with mythics and with regular dungeons, there's such a small little baby step and a small amount of time that you actually do it, to where I don't understand why they even have good queues as they are right now. So when I look at heroics, I just kind of, they're very weak at the moment compared to back in the day when heroics were all you pretty much did. You would constantly grind up these heroics and these harder dungeons to get the better rewards to get yourself into LFR. Now obviously nowadays we have LFR and we have Warfront and we have our emissary quests. Now the thing is, yes, variety is nice. However, the issue with variety is when you have a bunch of different things that give the same rewards, it gets it to where the point of doing LFR and Warfronts and emissary quests, it makes it to where that step is so much faster to where it gets rid of the result. So back in the day, you used to do LFR because you weren't able to get into the raid, or you wanted to get some quick raid gear to help yourself get into raids. However, now with having Warfronts and Raid Finder and emissary quests, you have all these different reward systems that give you stuff a lot faster. And then what happens is you have all these rewards super fast that the step is really quick and really done quick. Once again, now obviously getting stuff quicker to do raids quicker is nice and all, but the issue is that people will already have all the stuff required to get them to a state to where they are satisfied. So if you're already doing raids after 2 or 3 weeks of World of Warcraft, you have more of a reason to unsub. And I know that sounds really weird to say because you're experiencing some of the best content out there. I mean, raids in World of Warcraft are some of the best things out there, but the issue is by having all these extra rewards-based systems of emissaries, Warfronts, and Raid Finder, and having them all close together and you able to jump into raids like immediately, is that you're getting rid of a lot of the journey of World of Warcraft, which is one of the biggest reasons that keep you subbed. Imagine this. Within 2 weeks, you're able to do, you know, the dungeons and heroics and everything. I can say that you probably level up to max level within probably about a week, maybe a little bit longer. So you're able to do the dungeons and quests. So you're able to then do heroics for another week. And then also on top of that, you can do Warfronts and just spam Warfronts to get your stuff. Maybe do a LFR in the mix and some emissary quests to give you small upgrades there. Within 2 weeks of World of Warcraft, you are already ready for raiding. The next week you are doing raiding. And then you also do some Mythic Plus along the way. So obviously you get your weekly rewards from your Mythic Plus that are honestly sometimes better than what drops in the raid. So then you have a mixture of that and everything else. So within roughly, you know, let's say the first week you don't clear the raid all the way, but with Mythic Plus you get a bunch of really good gear that beats a lot of the normal raid out there. So let's assume that you clear normal and you get halfway through heroic and you do Mythic Plus. You now have a bunch of purple gear and already have, like, let's say half of your raid gear on. The next week you fully clear normal, you get your rewards from your Mythic Plus that are better than most of the stuff out there. You continue to do Mythic Plus, you fully clear heroic. Then the next week you do it again. Within about 2 months of World of Warcraft, you have already beaten the game pretty much and have gotten a lot of the maximum rewards. At this stage you can do Mythic, but most people don't do Mythic raiding. So at this point you have pretty much beaten World of Warcraft and there's no reason for you to resub. There lies the issue. I know what you're thinking. Awesome, you get to experience the content a lot faster and everybody gets to experience it. That's not the point. The point is that the journey to getting there is so quick now to the point where you get the incentives and you get this, the rate of satisfaction to the point where you are already kind of tired of the game. The point is, variety is not a good thing. While variety is nice and it adds a lot of really cool things to do and have you always have something to do, it makes it to where the journey is so short to getting to the point of satisfaction that it makes it to where the game as a whole is not as satisfying because you didn't have to grind too hard to get to that point. I know that's kind of really hard to explain, and I'm trying to explain it the best I can, but I hope you guys kind of understand that basically by Blizzard adding variety and making everything great, it makes it to where the rate of getting to the fun part is faster, and then you kind of go for the fun part and then you already kind of beat the game, so to speak, rating wise, because of how fast everything is. So it makes it to where the game is not that fun, and the progression path makes it to where everything is just basically on speed the entire time. So the first one I wanted to talk about is Titan Forging. I think Titan Forging is one of those things that a lot of people are making a lot of memes and talking a lot of crap about, and I think that it is important with the, you know, understanding why this is getting people mad is, well, it adds a lot of RNG. We've already gotten rid of Master Looter and things of that nature to where everything in the game is now RNG based. And while RNG based technically gives you better odds of getting gear, it also technically just makes it to where the game has a lot less interaction and a lot more people are getting angry. So the thing with RNG is, imagine, I like this thing that somebody posted in the forums, imagine getting chicken nuggets from, McDonald's. Imagine you get a 6-piece nugget and your friend orders the same thing. Imagine suddenly he gets a 12-piece nugget for free because he was lucky, and you get 6 pieces. That would intentionally kind of get you really mad. Now imagine every time you go to McDonald's, there's a chance that this happens, and every time that you go there to get a 6-piece nugget, you hope that you get a 12-piece, but then your friend once again gets 12 pieces of nuggets again, and you only get 6. It would really start to get you really mad, and that's sort of the scenario that's been going on. Is, some of the people are getting super lucky and some of the people are getting really unlucky, and the problem is those extreme case scenarios in a game with millions and millions of players, that tends to happen a lot more than you actually think, allowing things to really get people mad and angry. So how do we fix this system that is really bad? Well, I actually kind of wrote down some different notes on how I could actually fix this game. I think the first thing that you can do is don't have every boss be able to be Titan Forge. While I do think that Titan Forging is a nice incentive in the game, I think that it also kind of destroys the game a little bit. And here's how I say that you could fix it. Have it to where only the last boss can give you Titan Forging. Have it to where last bosses in every raid have a sort of thing like, for example, the last boss is just trinkets, or just headpieces, or just, one piece of gear that is really incentivized for everybody to want to, kill the final boss. Final bosses of many expansions have been kind of like weak, to say the least. Basically, it's like once you finish the boss, it's like, do you really want to just keep grinding to go up to Mythic, or do you not care? A lot of players actually don't care. Once they beat the raid, they beat the game. But I think having incentive to defeating the last boss over and over and over again would be a really good thing. Having it to where they Titan Forge up, allowing them that extra boost of wanting to do the raid over and over again, allowing players who haven't downed it, for example, your guild has downed the final boss, a lot of those players want to quit. And then, you who just got yourself geared up for raiding can't raid anymore because so many people quit for the final boss. This would allow people to want to continue subbing because they want to get that gear so that the next raid tier they have an advantage. Now here's the thing that I also think. I think Titan Forging should only happen while the content is relevant. So I think that'd be really cool because what it can do is it makes it to where, everybody wants to do it while it's relevant. So there's constantly raid going on, and everybody wants to go fully all the way through it because they want to kill the last boss to get that Titan Forge gear. So it really gets rid of the RNG of constantly having to worry about all the different bosses Titan Forging things, and it also makes it to incentivize that the last boss is the thing that you want to down over and over and over again. Now obviously this doesn't fully help out with every single scenario, but it does help out with the scenarios that really count. So I think that having it to where only the last boss is relevant and making it to where you really want to kill them over and over and over again can really help out with not only making the game a little bit more, raiding is more active and making the community more active, but I think it also makes it to where the Titan Forge system doesn't have to go away completely, but it makes it more relevant in certain aspects and doesn't make it to where there's constantly RNG to where the guy can get a piece off of every single boss that's Titan Forge and you get nothing. So it reduces the extreme case scenarios, but at the same time makes it to where it's more incentivized on the last bosses. Next we're going to talk about reputation and why I think that it's one of the worst ways to do things in the game. So most of the game now is based off of reputation. You get it for your races, you get it for your story, you get it for pretty much everything out there. And while I think reputation is a good way of incentivizing things, I think it also adds a lot of needless grind. See, back in the day, you used to be able just to kill mobs over and over and over again to get this reputation, to get yourself some awesome rewards. However, reputation rewards are kind of slim at best. There's a vendor, they typically have like a mount that everybody wants, and then they have like 340 gear, which, I mean, if you just do LFR, you pretty much get better stuff. So the incentive for reputation was very low. So Blizzard saw that as an opportunity to make it to where there's more incentives to do it. I think the racial system is one of the best ones out there. Having it to where you can get races based off of reputation is awesome. I think that's a great system right there. It makes it to where there's a grind, there's a little bit of prestige for having these allied races, and that's really good. And it also makes it to where leveling is relevant again. However, I do think that blocking story is a bad thing. When a new player jumps into the game and is behind on everybody, you're adding this extra time gate to it. You're making it to where it's harder for somebody to get into the game. For example, I have unsubbed now. Now that there's going to be a continuation of the war campaign, I'm going to be completely screwed, and yes, they'll give me bonuses to kind of make up for the reputation, but I will be completely screwed over, and I will have to do emissary quests over and over and over again to get this awesome storyline. What if I've already done raiding and everything, and I don't want to do the needless grind for these reputations to get the story? I think story and fun elements like that should never be locked behind reputation. I think it should be actually time gated. We saw this in Shield Wall with Miss Pandaria, where the system worked really well, where every single week there was something really cool. While it did kind of get some people mad while waiting for things, it did make it to where the expansion and the patch lasted a little bit longer. Everybody knows, like, once you beat a raid like 4 or 5 times, you kind of wonder why you're still playing the game. But having it to where there's a lot of time to where every single week is a different story, it adds a lot of really cool flavor and things to the game. And I think that adding it to where it's time gated rather than reputation based is way better. I don't want to have to do emissary quests if I've already got raid gear. I don't want to have to grind out stuff because the game tells me to. I want to experience the story and have fun with World of Warcraft. I don't want to have to grind to have fun. I shouldn't have to play an extra 5 or 6 hours to have the fun when I can just have the fun and then keep playing the game because of the rewards I got from the storyline. I think it's just a really flawed system, and I think it really destroys the game, and it makes it to where it's harder to get to those cool moments, and because it's harder to get to those cool moments, the war campaign is a really just, it's flat. I don't want to be forced to do it, but I have to because I want to experience it. So I think grinding for story is one of the worst things you can do. I think it's important just to keep the story of World of Warcraft going and to make it on week-to-week basis, because it can give a patch a little bit more of a leadway and room. So for every single player, there's an incentive to do something in the world. Next thing I wanted to talk about is professions, and professions have been something that the game has really gone downhill with. Do you guys remember back in the days when you could get crafting recipes in raids for your professions? Things like Firelands, and for example, you would sit there and grind bosses over and over again and grind out the mobs to get these recipes to build yourself some raid quality gear through the different raid, such as things as disenchanting the different items to get these certain materials to then use for your crafting materials. Where has that gone? What has happened to World of Warcraft to where professions have really lost their way? What incentives do you have for that? Besides the jewel crafters and out there, what reason do you have to do blacksmithing, to do engineering, to do all these different things? World of Warcraft has really built systems around that to where now with crafting gear, the best you get is something that can just get you into raids, and then after that you never touch your professions again. And I think that's a really flawed system. While there is small incentives to do your sort of professions, such as different things like gadgets for engineering, or maybe having small buffs for while you're questing, there's really not much of a reason to do that. Maybe small enchants here and there to give your gear a little bit of more variety and everything, but right now at the moment there's not much of a real reason for professions. I want to give you guys an example of, for example, the absolute best goggles you can get with your engineering. See the item level? This doesn't increase. Maybe over time you can try to increase it up a little bit, but right now this is the best item that engineering can make. Right here. This is the best, this is literally the best item you can build. These goggles. They're $340. And while it's nice that it has, you know, a few extra rings and everything, that's cool, there's not much of an incentive to use it. The amount of materials and things it requires are, you know, a decent amount. You can get this while you're leveling and everything. Problem is you have to work on your profession the entire time. I worked hard on my professions literally the entire time while I was leveling. I made sure not to make it too much of a priority, but I worked on it a little bit over time. And I was barely able to get this. But once you get to that point, there's no reason to want to get these goggles again. There's no reason at all. And I think that is a huge issue in World of Warcraft, where professions now are completely and utterly useless. There's no reason at all to get into World of Warcraft professions, besides if you're an enchanter or if you want to sell some quick regents or ores. The sort of reason to get into crafting gear was to make it to where it was something that you felt powerful in. I remember, you'd have all this different gear, and if you had the recipe for crafting raid gear, people would hit you up all the time. You would be able to sell them like hotcakes and make bank. Nowadays, this 340 gear sells for a ridiculous amount of number, and you'll be able to get rid of it within 2 weeks of World of Warcraft. And I think that's a huge issue. And I think that one of the things that it really does is it ruins the effect of why they were good in the first place. You used to look at certain characters, for example, like I would be Triax, and everybody would be like, oh man, he is the engineer. He gets all these really good engineer recipes. He has all the best bullets. He has, everything. In ICC, he has the best gun bullets and arrows. Talk to him and see if you can maybe bargain your way there. It added an extra incentive to why things were really awesome. So professions have really lost their way, and I don't understand why Blizzard doesn't just have it to where raids drop these recipes to make things a little bit better. They have all this whole system of the star system to where you can upgrade things and make them more powerful and cheaper on resources, but why not add more recipes along the way? Why not add it to where there's more different goggles out there? Why not have it to where there's better gear that drops over time? And I think that Blizzard is just getting lazy when it comes to professions. There's so much better systems out there. You don't even need to mine anymore. You can just scrap your gear to get the rewards now. You don't at all need to go and mine for hours on end. You don't need half the things out there. You don't need really that many enchanters in the world. You just need one or two, and you just go out there and get the enchants that they as they leveled. There's no grind. There's no progression system for professions. It's just you work on it, you barely get yourself into raids, and then once you're in the raids, you just do the raiding content. They've gotten rid of completely professions, and professions are just another thing in the leveling system. That's it. They are your questing and dungeon level stuff that gets you just enough to get into LFR. That's what professions are. Professions are no longer an extension of character. They're just a little minor progression system to get yourself up to LFR level. It's a really bad system, and I think that they should really fix that. There's so many things. Just adding crafting recipes to raids would just incentivize the game a lot more. Having it to where you're able to, in this world of RNG, we are able now to craft the gear that we want to get ourselves a little bit of that piece that we know we can have. Imagine being able to craft an Azerite helmet and knowing that for a fact that you're going to get it. That is super awesome, and I think that is something that could be really cool. Now, here's the thing though. I think the Titanforge system, why not add that to crafting? That'd be really cool. Have it to where, like, as stars go up, you have a chance of increasing the sort of rate of having this stuff Titanforge. Or, beyond that, having it to where, for example, you can have it to where you can, every time you craft a piece, it gets better chances of Titanforging, to the point where you can have it to where 100% Titanforges. I think there could be a lot of potential you can do with professions to make them 10 times better than it is right now. Next, we're going to talk about Azerite gear. Azerite gear has been a huge part of the expansion that's been really talked about. And basically, here is kind of how Azerite gear kind of works at the moment. When you first get your Azerite gear, you get to choose between, your first ring, which is usually a spec-specific one, and then one that is good for all different specs. So usually you choose a spec-specific one because that's usually what you're going to be playing is your spec. However, one of the biggest issues with this first ring is, obviously, if you have a alt, you want to change that Azerite thing. So you have to go all the way to Borealis or Zoldazar, I think is how it's pronounced for the Horde. Sorry, I'm not a Horde player. But basically you have to go back, reforge it, put it back to whatever thing that you always want to do. That first trait makes it to where it's really annoying for off-specs. So you already have an issue with the system right there, compared to Legion artifacts where you could just switch between your two different weapons and, you know, base it off of what different specs you had. So it makes it to where it's really annoying. And also, on top of that, off-specs, this is the worst expansion for you. Say you're a paladin that's also a healer and a tank. You switch between the two depending on what your raid needs at the time. You have to, every single time that you change your artifact gear, you have to go and pay for a reforging. However, every single time you do it, it doubles the cost, and doubles the cost, and doubles the cost, to the point where it sometimes can get up to a ridiculous amount of numbers. Basically telling you, the game is telling you that, and punishing you for off-specking, compared to Legion where every single spec felt unique and powerful. And off-specking was later kind of fixed up a bit and shown to have some different incentives out there. So it makes it to where that first trait, there's always, you always just pick the specific one because it usually has higher DPS or higher priority over everything else. So it doesn't really help. The second is always a protection based thing, whether it's just adding a shield or making it to where your movability is a little bit higher. Sometimes it incentivizes you a little bit with like avoidance or other stats out there, but most of the time it's just a protection thing. It doesn't add any special things out there, nothing really specific half the time. And then the third one is just an item level increase. So what are the issues here? The issues are, in Azerite gear, there's only really one thing for, especially DPSs out there. If you're a tank and healer, you always just go with the specific one. But with Azerite gear, with DPSing, which is the main thing, is you're always just picking that first trait as your spec specific. But with DPSing, there's only AoE and single target. While it is kind of cool to change out your gear for specific occasions, there's not really much of a reason to actually do the system besides that. You basically have two separate sort of Azerite gears that you can do, and it makes it to where Azerite gear is way like kind of like a crappier artifact weapon. Because with your artifact weapons you can actually switch and have a whole spec specific weapon that give you spec specific like awesome cool things that made it really enhanced. Now there's really no variety here, like none whatsoever. Like nothing is cool. They keep saying they're going to add more Azerite traits, and I think that adding more Azerite traits are not really good. I think what needs to happen with Azerite though, while the necklace system is cool and everything makes sense there, I think what they need to do is just add more rings. People love talents. People love having, you know, things to pick. I think having it to where, for example, an Azerite ring where it's just like, hey, do you want to increase your strength, your intelligence, your, you know, whatever, I think that's really awesome to have just a bunch of rings. Just have a bunch of tiny rings. They can be very meaningless, for example. But I think Blizzard really doesn't understand, like, they add, like, all these different, like, talent systems, and they're trying to condense it and condense it and condense it. But I think some of the things that they are missing is people like putting points into things. And making a system more elaborate and adding more rings is not a bad thing. I remember back in the day with talents, you would just add things for weapon specialization where you would just increase your damage maybe by 1%. But damn, clicking that button one time just made it felt good. And I think I would rather click something 20 times and give myself 20% more damage rather than just clicking one button that gives myself 20% damage, if you understand what that means. It's that satisfaction of knowing that you are progressing your character and always being able to progress your character. Blizzard has, what they've been doing is they've been condensing it down to make it as simple as possible for the easiest knowledge people. A lot of the times though, what they're missing out on is that satisfaction of sort of as you grind up your character, you're not getting as much as it, you know, should. And I think that that's a big miss for coming out there. So what I say is with Azerite gear, add it to where there's a lot more rings, just way more rings. Even though it may not look like these traits are very important or anything, I think it's important that you at least add this on there, because what you can do with it is you can add some more spec-specific things on there and add it to where there's, you know, you can have different stat increases. While minor, they still matter just a little bit more, and making it to where the game is a little bit better with your progression system to where you always feel satisfied, and that satisfaction can go along with your journey through World of Warcraft. So anyways, guys, that was sort of my issues with the game and how I think that you can fix it. Do I think I will resub to World of Warcraft? Yes, obviously. Like, I'm a nerd. I've been playing this game since I was like 10. Back before I went to an internet cafe where I wanted to go play EverQuest 2 with my dad, and this guy said, no, you want to play World of Warcraft, it's 10 times better. I remember being a dwarf, I think I was a dwarf warrior, my dad was a dwarf paladin, and us taking the deep tram all the way to Stormwind and being amazed. And I remember hiding behind a tree because this orcs and everybody were going to raid into Stormwind, and watching them kill my father and me hiding behind the tree while an orc was hunting me down. I just remember those days, and I love this game, and I've been playing it for years and years and years, and I think that this game can do some things right. I wanted today to be constructive and to really focus on a lot of the issues at hand. I think that a lot of people are yelling at the game without giving any sort of different results and everything. And I think that is not the way that you should do that. I think that sort of YouTube in general, I've seen a lot of people yelling and screaming and huffing and puffing and being all cynical about the game, but in reality, they're garbage critics because they don't show of ways that they can fix the game. Today I wanted to give you an example of every single thing that is an issue and how they can fix and make the game a little bit better. I think the journey of World of Warcraft has been destroyed, and I think, you know, one of the things that people always look back on is Vanilla WoW. And I think Vanilla WoW was pretty much garbage. Not so much garbage as in like a bad game, but I meant like a lot of the systems and things out there were kind of not as well as they are today. I think that one of the biggest things was the journey. And while yes, obviously I just talked smack about Vanilla, I think Vanilla had the best journey ever. Everything was a grind. Everything felt rewarding. Every level you felt incentivized, because every level you got a talent point. You got to put it in something. You got, you know, every time you completed a dungeon, you're like, yeah, I spent 2 hours to get this group together, and after an hour we completed this dungeon. Hell yeah. And I think that was a lot of incentivizing there. You know, just getting a group felt incentivized. Just getting a talent point felt good. Just getting yourself into a new world, a new zone, a new area felt great. You know, doing a raid and defeating an actual first boss of like Blackwing was awesome. I think that was really cool. And then getting to Nefarian was just like, whoa. And then like him doing all of his different effects based off of the different races or not races, but classes was awesome. And I think that it's really cool to just see that. Now, obviously, I was at a young age when I played Vanilla, but I know that those moments and everything were really important. And I think that the game has been really losing that over time. And I think that over time, it'll make it a lot better, knowing that the journey of World of Warcraft can be fixed. While variety is great, I think that variety is what is also killing the game. It's making things sped up to ridiculous levels, and it made everything happy in Legion, but it's speeding up things so much to the point where people are technically beating the game faster and faster and faster, and giving it not much incentives to stay in this world. I think that story content is being held back a lot more than it should. Story is one of the other things that keeps the game going, and I think time gating it and having it to where the story unfolds over time can make the game 10 times better. We're getting to the point now where day one you do all the story content, and then after that there's no more story, and you have to wait and wait and wait until the PTR leaks, and then you kind of get your story from there. There's speculation, then it's shown in game, and everybody already knows the story by then. And I think time gating it would really help out with extending the story a little bit longer and making it really awesome, and making the journey of World of Warcraft that much better. I really want to thank everybody for watching this video. I know that maybe I have some things that are a little bit more controversial that I've said today, but this is how I feel about the game and how I think that we could fix the game. I don't know how many people this will reach, as I am a smaller YouTuber, but I really wanted to talk about this because this is something I am very passionate about and I think could actually fix the game a lot more. And I want to thank everybody for watching. In the comments below, tell me some of the reasons that you guys sort of quit the game, and some of the reasons that you think would fix the game as well, because I think that it's important that we talk about what the issue is and how we think we can fix it. Let Blizzard know what we think could fix the game, so that way they can build the game into a better universe, into a better World of Warcraft. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Be sure to subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.